What? You're guaranteed to have a perfect drive.
Go national. Go like a pro.
You see what I did there?
Tucker Carlson is brought to you by National Car Rental. Go national. Go like a pro.
In this case, you're guilty until proven innocent. I think that is a very, very dangerous standard for our country. With that being said, I look forward to what she has to say. I also look very forward to what Judge Kavanaugh has to say.
That was the president at his press conference today. Well, more than 60 of Brett Kavanaugh's childhood friends have now signed a statement defending him as a man, defending his character. Missy Bigelow Carr has known Kavanaugh since high school. She signed that letter. She joins us tonight. Missy Carr, thank you very much for joining us. When you hear these allegations levied against a man you've known for 35 years, what's your response?
It's heartbreaking, for one, to see our friend go through this horrible process that he's going through and the allegations, and knowing that they're just unfounded. One is more salacious than the next. It's just not the man that we know. It's not the guy that we knew 35 years ago and since then. So
there was never a moment since you've known him continuously and you were there when he was in high school where you thought, no, I don't know, who knows, maybe?
Never. Never.
So these new claims today that there were a series of widely attended parties at which gang rapes took place. People who don't live here don't know, I think, how small these communities are.
Correct. Yeah.
If there had been 10 of these at which people were raped in public, do you think...
If there was one of those, that would have been an enormous uproar among all the Catholic schools. It would have spread like wildfire, even if it was a public school, if any Catholic school kids were involved. Not 10. 10 would never happen. If even one happened like that, it would have been known.
So this claim today being taken seriously throughout the press by many politicians that there were at least 10 rape parties that Brett Kavanaugh took part in that somehow no one heard about for 35 years, that does not strike you as credible?
100% not credible. Don't believe any of that. I never experienced anything like that, never heard of anything like that. And like I said, if anything even close to that had happened, word would have traveled like wildfire through our different schools and communities and parents and all of that.
How do you think the Kavanaugh family is doing in the face of all this?
I think they're trying to stay strong. I think they know they have a lot of support, even though they see the opposite on their doorsteps and in other ways. But we're all here to support him, and I think they know that.
I think it's just important to remember that these are people, they're human beings, they're not just symbols.
It's not easy, and the poor children, and there's children involved and all of that. So.
Yeah, it's awful. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for having me.
Ms. Carr. Well, a lot is going on in this story. It's developing in all kinds of different directions. Even tonight, every person who is covering this is getting text after email after text, alleging new things, new threads. We can't assess which ones of them are true, but of course we will, and we will bring that to you continuously. Bret Baier, Martha MacCallum covering tomorrow's Senate hearing that starts at 9 a.m. and will be going for a lot of the day. That's it for us tonight. Tune in every night to the show that's the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Good night from Washington. Sean Hannity is in New York. Well, Sean Hannity has somehow shown up on our set here in Washington.
Yeah, I know. Welcome aboard. Thank you for sharing your set.
Well, it's great to see you, Sean.
You know, you gave me 5 seconds extra. Added to the clock.
I'm a generous man.
Great show.
See you.
Very nice to meet you, too. And welcome to Hannity. We have huge, massive breaking news from Political Wall Street Journal just literally seconds ago. We're going to break it down for you. We're broadcasting once again live from the swamp, Washington, D.C. The stench, by the way, has never been worse. Tonight, there is no line that Democrats in this country, the left in this country, will not cross when it comes to stopping the nomination of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. All civility, all morality, all decency, all fairness, it has all been thrown right out the window. And right now, tonight, we're in a trench fight for what are the fundamental rights of all Americans. Democrats clearly now on a witch hunt, clearly hell-bent on destroying the name, the character, the career, and even the family of Judge Kavanaugh without any due process, zero presumption of innocence. or even an added dose of common sense. You got a sleazy, attention-seeking lawyer by the name of Michael Avenatti, all leading the way. The #1 guest on fake news CNN and conspiracy TV, MSNBC. And he, along with Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, they are the new leaders of the Democratic Party, which is now becoming a party of mob rule. No due process, no presumption of innocence. We're going to preview and review all of today's breaking news. We will go through it slowly, and we'll set the stage for what is tomorrow's extremely important hearing, where Judge Kavanaugh and his accuser, Professor Christine Ford, will rightfully have a chance to speak. So we will now, in the next hour, separate fact from fiction, justice from injustice. We will talk about Constitution and due process and bring some sanity to one of the single most important processes in our federal government. And we'll do that in tonight's D.C. sewer swamp opening monologue. All right, we're going to go through all of this very, very slowly, very precisely. There's a lot of ground to cover in the last 2 minutes, even breaking news I'll get to in a second. So tomorrow morning, we will finally get a chance to witness one of the most important hearings in the history of Supreme Court nominations. As I have said many, many times, the 36-year-old allegation made by Professor Christine Ford against Judge Kavanaugh, I've said from the beginning, it should be taken seriously. And it has been, by Republicans, by the president. And at 10 a.m., in an open hearing, they will lay it all on the table, and the U.S. Senate, they will make an informed decision about Judge Kavanaugh. Remember, their constitutional role is advice and consent. And of course, context is very, very important. 40 years of one's life is very important. Judge Kavanaugh has been in the public spotlight for all these decades, and because of his work, he has literally faced, he has passed 6 deep background FBI checks. Those that know Kavanaugh the best, high school friends, college friends, those that went to law school, girlfriends, colleagues, fellow judges, clerks, those people that have all worked with him, parents of the girls he coached in basketball and other sports. Democrats, Republicans have all praised Kavanaugh for his character, his judgment, his friendship, who he is. Throughout his entire life, he never, until, 12 days ago, faced any allegation of any sexual misconduct ever. And Judge Kavanaugh has one of the most extensive track records of any federal judge. He worked in one of the most highest profile federal courts. He's been there for years. And we also know that Professor Ford and her groping allegations against him have a lot of issues. We're going to go step by step through every allegation tonight. These charges were made to congressional Democrats, well, just a few weeks ago, not an independent law enforcement agency. And by the way, the claim dates back when Ford and Kavanaugh were in high school 36 years ago. And Ford cannot remember a date, a location of the alleged incident. She can't remember what happened before or after the incident. The 4 witnesses that Ford listed to corroborate her claims, all of them deny what she is alleging. And Professor Ford is represented by an attorney who we pointed out on this show is a left-wing activist who once vowed to resist Donald Trump at every level and who's inconsistent on important issues involving sexual harassment in the workplace. She didn't believe Paula Jones, obviously. She defended Al Franken. Now, despite all of these warning signs, it is so important that Professor Ford and Judge Kavanaugh speak under oath. It's important to take it seriously. Now, Republicans and the president, they have made every accommodation possible. And tonight, Democrats are doing the exact opposite. They have already convicted Judge Kavanaugh before even hearing from him or Professor Ford. The left, so many of them, rushing to judgment on 2 other uncorroborated claims against Kavanaugh. Allegations that are so salacious, they will literally tonight make your head spin. Now, the second claim that came out in the New Yorker magazine was so outrageous, so unsubstantiated, that even the Trump-hating New York Times refused to officially report on it. In this case, a woman named Deborah Ramirez. She alleged that in the 1980s, Kavanaugh might have exposed himself to her at a drunken college party. Ramirez herself, she wasn't totally sure if it was Kavanaugh, if he was the perpetrator. According to her own words, her own account, she became, quote, quickly inebriated at the party. She was, quote, her own words, foggy and slurring her words. And Ramirez even acknowledged that she had significant memory gaps from that evening. those Ramirez listed as witnesses in her case to the incident, they've all flatly denied her charge, including her own best friend. Not a single person corroborating her story, not one. And tonight, just moments ago, we learned there's another accuser now making an anonymous hearsay claim about an incident that took place between Cavanaugh and a woman in 1998. And this anonymous NBC News report is obviously a report that I doubt NBC News would ever make about Tom Brokaw or Matt Lauer or Andy Lack. They wouldn't do it about people that they work with or have worked with over the years. So the question is, how is Judge Kavanaugh now supposed to defend himself from now an anonymous accuser at the 11th hour? Which now brings us to the single most sickening allegation that the left wants you to believe as absolute fact. It was brought into the public domain by, you know him. He's on, what, fake news CNN every hour on the hour. And if he's not there, he's over at Conspiracy TV, MSNBC. Michael Avenatti, the bombastic, untrustworthy, fame-seeking attorney who made it his life's mission to resist and hate Donald Trump, which is fine. Avenatti's client in this case is a woman named Julie Swetnick. And at this late hour, she is alleging that between 1981 and 1983, that she attended at least 10 parties where she claims that Judge Kavanaugh and his friend Mark Judge routinely drugged female partygoers, that this happened regularly, almost on a weekend basis, and even in the summer, in an organized scheme to either give them grain alcohol or give them drugs, to gang rape, train rape these women. She claims to have witnessed this on many occasions, and also claims to have been the victim of a gang rape where Kavanaugh was present, although she did stop short of naming Kavanaugh as one of the alleged rapists. So she's saying that there were 10 parties. This was supposed to be a regular, almost weekly practice where gang rape took place and girls, young girls, were drugged and raped. And she said nothing in 36 years, nor did anybody else who ever went to any of these parties, not a single person. No specific locations, no specific dates were given, no names were given other than Mark Judge and Judge Kavanaugh, no other witnesses listed. No one has corroborated these claims. And during the alleged time period, Swetnick would have been enrolled in college, while Kavanaugh would have been a 15 or 16-year-old high school student. She described boys waiting in line to rape drugged women. And she says she went to at least 10 of these parties, and many more happened. And nobody ever told a teacher, a law enforcement representative, a parent, anybody. Everybody that was a part of this all kept it secret. In a statement, Kavanaugh reacted to this. This is what he said. "This is ridiculous and from the Twilight Zone. I don't know who this is, and this never happened." And today, just hours after these allegations became public, 64 high school acquaintances and friends of Judge Kavanaugh, they rushed to his defense in a statement, calling these claims, quote, nonsense. "We never witnessed any behavior that even approaches what is described in this allegation. It is reprehensible in the extensive amount of time we collectively have spent with Brett Kavanaugh. We do not recall having ever met someone named Julie Swetnick, nor did we ever observe Brett engaging in any conduct resembling that described in Ms. Swetnick's so-called declaration." Now remember, Judge Kavanaugh told our own Martha McCallum he was a virgin throughout all of high school and most of college. Can't believe we're discussing this, but we are. Here's what he said.
People generally in high school, I think all of us have probably done things we look back on in high school and regret or cringe a bit, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an allegation of sexual assault. I've never sexually assaulted anyone. I did not have sexual intercourse or anything close to sexual intercourse in high school or for many years thereafter. And the girls from the schools I went to and I were friends.
So you're saying that through all these years that are in question, you were a virgin?
That's correct.
Never had sexual intercourse with anyone in high school?
Correct.
And through what years in college, since we're probing into your personal life here?
Many years after. I'll leave it at that. Many years after.
Now, today, Senator Lindsey Graham, he tweeted out, quote, "I have a difficult time believing any person could continue going to, according to the affidavit, 10 parties over a 2-year period where women were routinely gang raped and not reported." And Graham continues, quote, "Why would any reasonable person continue to hang around people like this? Why would any person continue to put their friends and themselves in danger? Isn't there some duty to warn others?" And also breaking just moments before we came on air, new reports that a restraining order was filed against Julie Swetnick by her ex-boyfriend. That was in 2001. Her boyfriend tonight telling the Politico, quote, "Right after I broke up with her, she was threatening my family, threatening my wife, threatening to do harm to my baby at that time." And then she said in a telephone conversation with Politico, "I know a lot about her. She's not credible at all." He said, "Not at all." Look what the Wall Street Journal is reporting just literally minutes ago. Roughly a decade ago, Ms. Swetnick was involved in a dispute with a former employer, New York Life Insurance Company, over a sexual harassment complaint that she filed. According to people familiar with the matter, representing her in the complaint was the firm run by Deborah Katz, the lawyer currently representing Dr. Ford, and the company ultimately reached a financial settlement with Ms. Swetnick, according to people in the Wall Street Journal. Now, despite everything we have now showed you, you have, and this is where we're in a crisis in this country, many in the left, many in the media, the Democratic Party, they have already convicted Judge Kavanaugh of what are horrific, life-shattering claims. And we've got the evidence. Take a look.
This is a monumental defining moment this week when you have someone like Cosby going to prison and then in the same breath having Kavanaugh possibly going to the highest court in the land.
To be honest, that is very much a white male Republican defense to say, oh, I was a virgin, I could not have possibly sexually assaulted a woman.
Part of this backlash that we're seeing right now comes from a culture of sexism and paternalism in this country, where the patriarchy in this country has controlled everything, has silenced women generation after generation.
This is the patriarchy on full display. This is the patriarchy on full display.
Brett Kavanaugh, I never did anything wrong. I mean, that to me was you know, it was not believable.
Do we allow the sexual predator in chief, the admitted sexual predator in chief, to place people on the Supreme Court? He's picking the type of people that are essentially like him. And this whole thing needs a whole investigation now. This should not go forward.
While the left, the media, Democrats, all rush to judgment, many others rightfully are questioning why someone with serious criminal claims would utilize the services of the very political, the very anti-Trump, maybe wanting to run for president, sleazy lawyer named Michael Avenatti. Earlier today, the president had this to say about him. Take a look.
If you look at this lawyer that just came out, he's a lowlife. He represented Democrats. Nobody ever talks about that. He's a Democrat lawyer. Not a very good one, but he's a Democrat lawyer. So it's a horrible con game. I think the people are finding it out.
I want everybody to think about this because I believe Americans are fair-minded. This isn't about Republican or Democrat tonight at all. It's not about conservative or liberal even. Michael Avenatti, Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, now the new faces of the Democratic Party. We have an election in 41 days. Avenatti gearing up for a presidential run. This is now, and this is what we've got to think about. This is now a party of no due process, no rule of law, no constitution, zero presumption of innocence. Do you know it's in the last 12 days, I can't find a single Democrat that is willing to defend the principle of presumption of innocence and due process? By the way, the party of Bill Clinton and Keith Ellison. So tonight, what we are seeing from Avenatti and the people on the left in this country, sadly, I tell you this often, they use this tactic every 2 and 4 years. Character assassination is the #1 tool in the Democratic playbook, something the president called out earlier today in a powerful press conference. How often do I say every 2 4 years they're going to call Republicans racist? How horrible is that? Sexist, misogynist, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic. Republicans want dirty air and water, and they want children to die, and they want to throw Granny over the cliff. We now have gotten used to it. But to say that about people every election season, to do this with every Supreme Court nominee, here's what the president said.
They're actually con artists because they know how quality this man is, and they've destroyed a man's reputation, and they want to destroy it even more. And I think people are going to see that in the midterms, what they've done to this family, what they've done to these children, these beautiful children of his, and what they've done to his wife. And they know it's a big, fat con job. And they go into a room, and I guarantee you, they laugh like hell at what they pulled off on you and on the public. They laugh like hell.
Now, the president, he knows the shameful tactics of the left firsthand. Remember during the presidential election? Remember when the New York Times, I think it was Top Fold, they falsely accused President Trump's sexual misconduct, so-called bombshell story? Well, the only problem is the sources the Times used denied that Trump ever acted inappropriately. Now, we know because we interviewed some of them, a number of them. Here's what the president had to say about that earlier today.
I was accused by, I believe it was 4 women. You can check with Sean Hannity. You can check with Fox because they covered it very strongly. Who got paid? Excuse me. I was accused by 4 or 5 women who got paid a lot of money to make up stories about me. We caught them, and the mainstream media refused to put it on television. They refused to even write about it.
We actually followed up on this program. Everyone else in the media ignoring and just going along with the New York Times put out there. Well, I actually did some reporting, had the opportunity to interview the women from the Times fake news story. Here's what they said after the Times made the accusation. Take a look.
I have never seen him be anything but a gentleman, very gracious to women, very respectful of women, and anybody that tells me that I saw that is wrong. He was not that way to me. He wasn't that way to anybody I met. I met a lot of women when I was around him. He employs a lot of women. He deals with a lot of women, and he respects them, and they respect him.
I basically, wouldn't give them a story, and now they came out with their own version of it and took, something out of my book and just totally twisted it and made it so negative. And I have nothing but positive things to say about Donald Trump.
I don't remember the retraction in the New York Times either. Now, the left's character assassination strategy didn't start with President Trump. It is a time-tested practice from the Democratic Party. Remember what they did to Reagan's nominee for the U.S. Supreme Court, Robert Bork. He was never confirmed because of the fear-mongering, slander, outright lies from, of all people, a guy that left a woman to die and told nobody after he drove his car into a river, and he walked away and went home and went to bed. Chap acquitted Kennedy. Take a look.
Robert Bork's America is a land in which women would be forced into back alley abortions. Blacks would sit at segregated lunch counters. Rogue police could break down citizens' doors in midnight raids. And school children could not be taught about evolution. Writers and artists would be censored at the whim of government.
And then a few years later, of course, Democrats tried to drag Supreme Court Justice, who's become one of the finest justices in our generation, Clarence Thomas, through the mud. 1991, Senate Democrats pulled out his former colleague, Anita Hill, making sexual harassment allegations against him. Sound familiar? This character assassination was so vicious, so horrible, so nasty, Justice Thomas called it a high-tech lynching. Take a look.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Well, the circus, the disgrace is back in Washington, and these tactics don't stop at the Supreme Court nominees. Many also tried to destroy the character. I know I was in Atlanta at the time of the Olympic bombing. Richard Jewell falsely accused as being the lone bomber. He fit the profile because he lived with his mother. He was listening to my radio show at the time and said I was only one that stood up for him and at least gave him the presumption of innocence. It changed my life. They also smeared, falsely accused. Remember the Duke lacrosse team? We didn't rush to judgment on this show. And let's not forget what the left did in Ferguson. Darren Wilson was found innocent in that case. Remember Baltimore, Freddie Gray, all the people saying he'd be convicted. Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman. How many times did the president at the time, Obama, rush to judgment? The Cambridge police acted stupidly. During every big moment, so many in the left, so many in the press rushed to judgment for pure political gain. There's no presumption of innocence ever with these people when it comes to politics. Harry Reid lies about Mitt Romney in 2012, said he hadn't paid taxes in 10 years. And when asked about it later, after the election and Romney lost, he boasts about it. He's proud of his lie. This happens every election season. One of the biggest smear jobs that of all comes from us, from Christopher Steele's dirty dossier, a document bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC to lie to you, the American people, to rig an election in this country, and then to destroy a president after with absurd, untrue, salacious claims like this. Trump's, quote, perverted conduct in Moscow included hiring the presidential suite of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, where he knew President and Mrs. Obama had stayed on one of their official trips to Russia, and defiling the bed where they had slept by employing a number of prostitutes to perform golden showers, in other words, urination, a show in front of him. Well, during an interrogatory in Great Britain, Christopher Steele, under the threat of perjury, he said that dossier, oh, that's just raw intelligence. There's only a 50-50 chance. Those lies were spread to you, the American people. Hillary paid for it. Russian lies of all things. Yet the left push these unverified, uncorroborated claims throughout the highest levels of our government, right into the gullible media, their arm that pushes their propaganda. And as you can see, the left's attempt to destroy the lives of people with baseless claims, it is a clear, obvious, and now predictable pattern. These are real people, unfortunately. These are real lives. When you say that someone's a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a gang rapist, real families, Democrats using all of them, pawns in a political game, no due process, no presumption of innocence. How would you feel if it was you, America, tonight? Because this is the modern Democratic Party. They have now defined themselves as a party of slander, smear, character assassination, a party of besmirchment. This is clearly who they are, because I can't find a Democrat now saying they believe in the presumption of innocence. This now defines them. They only want power for themselves. Are they talking about the economy, about security for the American people? This is why every fair-minded American has a right to be skeptical tonight. What you're witnessing is one of the ugliest smear campaigns in history. If America doesn't get this right, there will be no good people in this country that ever want to serve their country for decades to come. Why would they? They're not doing it for the money. Democrats are now the party of no due process. They're the party of no presumption of innocence. They're not the party that believes in the Constitution. Has one Democrat said presumption of innocence? I haven't heard them. And you want to know why? Because they all seem to believe when politics in play, when power is in play, that's what matters. All of this, I hope you remember in 41 days. And with reaction, Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Joe DeGeneva, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, and one of Judge Kavanaugh's former high school girlfriends, Maura Kane, is with us. We're going to start with you, Tammy Bruce in New York.
Yeah. Sean, it's just an astounding monologue you gave, but it's a reminder to everyone what the horrible situation we're in. Now, as you know, for a couple of weeks now, I have been concerned about the attitude that has been perpetrated here about sexual assault victims. I've claimed that we should watch out for women not being believed because of the attitude of what's been happening here, and how now these claims are being used as a political football, as a political bomb, if you will. With this new claim, it is so fantastical, literally unbelievable. We are now in a position where everyone is looking at this questioning the nature of accusations because now they're simply being used for political reasons. It's shameful, it's shocking. And the other argument is, Sean, that people have said, well, you know, the due process and the presumption of innocence is for a courtroom. This is not a courtroom. In fact, and obviously that's not true. That is a standard for all of us throughout our civil and social society, that what we do in law and in the judicial framework must be a reflection of how we treat each other in civil life, in business, legally, and socially. Because if this will seep into, it's already, of course, a factor in colleges, but it will move into businesses, that accusations will be enough. It will move into our social sphere and our relationships in general, in society. This is supposed to be the modeling of how we treat other Americans and our neighbors. The left wants division and is relying so much on hatred that they want it to flow over onto the rest of us. And we have a chance, as you noted in November, to reject it. And right now, Cavanaugh is just a symbol. He is, in my opinion now, from with what we've seen, an innocent man, and now he's a symbol of what the left wants to destroy.
Joe DeGenova, you've been in this town with this stench a long time. Ever seen anything this bad?
No, I haven't. And I think that Senator Feinstein has set in motion one of the great tragedies in American history. She has traduced and besmirched the United States Senate. She has purposely tried to ruin a good man, but more than that, she has tried to ruin his wife and his two daughters. This is a disgraceful performance by the Democratic Party. And let me say this to Mazie Hirono, the Hawaiian senator, Democrat, who told all the men of America to shut up. Tonight, I say to her, shut up, Senator, shut up. I'm sick of you. I'm sick of Dianne Feinstein. I'm sick of Senator Blumenthal and all the Democrats who have one thing in mind. They want power. They thirst for power, and they don't care who they ruin in the process. This is a moment of disgrace for the United States Senate. And if they don't confirm him to the United States Senate, the Republicans will lose the Senate. This is a national disgrace.
I have known you for many, many years. You've never told anybody to shut up in your life. Could you imagine anybody saying to any woman ever, shut up, and what the reaction would have been?
Yes,
and
it's just amazing.
Sarah.
And I'm so sick of the Democrats on this committee, what they are doing, not just to Judge Kavanaugh, to the country.
But it's not, and you're absolutely right, but it's also about women. And Tammy Bruce brought up such an important point. These assassination attempts on Kavanaugh and his family, and leaves the rest of the women that actually have a reason to complain, a reason to go to the law. Now they're going to be treated. How are we going to be treated as women after this happened? And so, Sean, I think, here we have a man whose family has been just besmirched, as you said, in the press. He's just ripped apart. And now I think the only thing for us to do is to sit back, let him speak. Let's hear him out. You are innocent until proven guilty in this country.
Maura, you were the high school girlfriend. This is the time that all these allegations are being made. You stayed in, obviously you've known him all this time. Did you ever hear of any of this? Is this the person you knew in any way?
Never. From the very first accusation, alleged, attack by Dr. Ford, I was surprised. I was skeptical. I didn't believe it. But then the more recent accusations are absolutely preposterous. They're ridiculous. They do not even fit in with anything remotely close to Brett Kavanaugh or our high school life. There's no way.
On so many high school, college, law school, Bush administration, all these people, Sarah? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to say, look, Judge Kavanaugh had 5 to 6 FBI thorough background investigations. Now, this isn't just FBI paper trail, Sean. They actually go to your friends. They interview your neighbors. They go back to people you knew in high school, in college. They interview your employers. They run criminal background checks. None of that came up. None of that in 5 or 6 of those investigations.
Let me go back to Tammy. Tammy, when you look at Professor Ford, and I don't have a problem with her being heard, and the people that she mentioned, they all contradict her story. They
Right.
don't have, and then if you look at the New Yorker piece, which should never have been printed, even the New York Times said that Ms. Ramirez in that particular case was calling people from Yale. New York Times saying, and they talked to dozens of people and saying, do you remember it? I'm not sure. And then you've got this allegation. So we're going to believe that somebody went to one party, gang rape, drugging women, inebriated, boys lined up to rape a girl one at a time, and that it never came out by anybody ever in 36 years? We're supposed to believe that tonight.
First of all, no one is. And again, this is what our problem is now, because there are women who have not been heard, who have not had justice, who've not been believed. And this is our struggle as women, many of whom, if not a majority, have experienced sexual harassment, sexual assault. And we make different choices about how to handle those things. But we've been working for generations to be taken seriously. Senator Feinstein and the Democrats, supposedly the champions for women, with this process have denigrated all of us. Now, look, I think that of all of the accusations, perhaps Professor Ford's was the most plausible. But when her own witnesses said it did not happen or contradicted her, it became a problem. And this is the thing that all three accusations have in common. No witnesses, no specifics, no corroboration, or in fact, even a contradiction. And the inability to corroborate, the inability to do so, all three.
Miss Swetnick goes to 10 parties, allegedly, while she's in college, to high school parties where women are gang raped. She never reports it to anybody. She says she's gang raped. She never reports it to anybody. No police report. Look, Dr. Ford, in addition, when you read her biography in the Washington Post, it's a Rorschach test. She's a very troubled woman. She's had a very troubled past. This never happened. This is a figment of her imagination.
What will the Republicans do? What are the Republicans going to do? Because
they should all shut up and let the lawyer ask all the questions. All those senators,
which I think is
keep
fair,
their mouths shut and let the prosecutor from Arizona.
The Democrats hate that because then they can't.
I want them all to
Republicans
shut
hate
up.
women.
I don't want to see a single Republican senator ask a question.
I absolutely agree. We need to hear them out, and we need to hear Judge Kavanaugh speak. He needs to be able to present his testimony.
Last word, Mark.
The whole thing is outrageous. None of it's true. And Brett, it's going to be okay.
How long did you date him?
A few months.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Happy to support.
We have a lot to get to tonight from the sewer, the swamp. The stench is horrible here, obviously. Kristen Fisher joins us with the very latest on the Kavanaugh hearing tomorrow morning. When we come back, the great one, Mark Levin. We'll hear from him. And Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, as we continue from D.C. Stay with us.
If you could just backfill that vehicle into that call for me as well. Again, a couple of doctors.
Already done, sir.
25 will be out. To respond to 51 Marine Drive for an oven that was working. The oven has been shut off and people have been evacuated. Engine 2 to 51 Marine Drive for an oven that was working is now off. Home is evacuated. County of Dispatch 2000. Five jobs just prior to 13.
All right, joining us now with the very latest on Judge Kavanaugh, the controversy, and of course the hearing tomorrow. Fox News Washington correspondent Kristen Fisher. I get to see you in person for once.
I know. Great to see you. Welcome to D.C.
A lot of news.
Yeah, and you know there have been a lot of big hearings over the last 2 years, but this one may be the biggest. You've got a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court hanging in the balance, and at least 2 new accusers coming out today, though one is totally anonymous. Now, Judge Kavanaugh, he's denying all of them. He calls the accusations from Julie Swetnick, who, by the way, shares the same attorney as Stormy Daniels, quote, ridiculous and from the Twilight Zone. I don't know who this is, and this never happened. Now, Swetnick claims that she was drugged and gang raped at a party that Kavanaugh was at 36 years ago. But the focus tomorrow will be entirely on the first accuser, Christine Blasey Ford. President Trump, he's continuing to defend his nominee, calling it all a con job by Democrats. But he also promised to keep an open mind and really listen to what she has to say.
You know, believe it or not, I'm going to see what's said. So it's possible that they will be convincing. I can always be convinced. I have to hear it.
Now, in addition to their testimony, there's also 2 key pieces of evidence to watch for tomorrow. The results of Ford's polygraph test, which her attorneys claim proves that she's telling the truth. And then there's Kavanaugh's handwritten calendar from when he was 17 years old. It places him at places like the beach and baseball games, but his attorneys say not at a party like the one that Ford describes. And, you know, that's the problem when you're dealing with claims from 36 years ago. There's just not a lot of hard evidence to back either of them up.
Yeah, well, this is obviously problematic in every case. Kristen Fisher, good to see you in Washington. Thank you for joining us now with Reaction. He is the host of CRTV's Levin TV, the host of Life, Liberty, Levin, right here on the Fox News Channel. By the way, the #1 show on Sunday night by far. We call him the Great One, Mark Levin. Mark, I'm just going to throw it right to you. We've seen a lot over the years. I've been doing radio 30 years. I've been at the Fox News Channel since October 1996. It's never been this awful, and it's been bad a lot of times.
Couple things here. First of all, notice there's no blue dress here. Out of these 3 accusers, there's not a single eyewitness. There's not a single corroborating witness. There's not a single shred of evidence. So that's what they have in common. No case, which is exactly why the Democrats believe that only the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Bill of Rights don't apply. Only the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Constitution doesn't apply. No due process, no presumption of innocence, because they have to make that case. Because you want to know why? I believe Brett Kavanaugh. I believe Brett Kavanaugh. The Democrats, their lawyers, their operatives, the Senate, their staffers, all scheming around in the shadows. They've come up with literally nothing tangible or concrete. The reason why they blow this off, that it's not a court of law, is because that's how totalitarians think. And so you have people who make accusations. This isn't about women's rights. It's not even about women. There are millions and millions of women out there, many of them watching your show. My wife, my mother, my daughter, my stepdaughter, my mother-in-law and so forth, who don't believe any of this. There's tens of millions of women who find this entire spectacle. It's not a hearing. It's a spectacle. It's a Roman Colosseum. They're throwing them to the lions. They find this disgusting. Liberals don't speak for women. Did Ted Kennedy speak for Mary Jo Kopechne? Did Bill Clinton speak for all the women that he sexually assaulted? I don't think so. Now, people keep saying Brett Kavanaugh had 6 FBI background investigations. How many background investigations did Ms. Ford have? 0. How about the other accusers? How many FBI background investigations did they have? 0. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting to me, all these left-wing Democrat lawyers who represent these accusers, they know where the Montgomery County Police Department is. They haven't walked a single one of their clients into that law enforcement office to file a complaint against Mr. Cavanaugh. They keep talking about the FBI. The jurisdiction is Montgomery County, Maryland, boys, and you know where it is. Why don't you go ahead and file your complaints there? And I'll tell you why. Because then the rule of law actually kicks in. And they don't want the rule of law to apply. And I'm starting to wonder about the Senate Judiciary Committee, Sean. They're either filled with perverts or totalitarians. It's one or the other. They are gleeful, they're exciting, they're salivated all over this. It is a disgusting spectacle. Now, a couple of other things I want to mention, which is this. Look at this latest example. This lady comes forward. Her ex-boyfriend comes forward, and Politico reports he doesn't believe a word that she says. Avenatti's back. The slip and fall porn lawyer. The Democrats embrace him. They embrace the argument. Ms. Ramirez didn't want to come forward. The Democrat staff go find her, try and drag her forward. No corroborating witnesses. Her memory suddenly is HD color clear, but she's not going to testify. Then we have Dr. Ford. I've never understood this Dr. Ford issue. She wanted to remain private, so where does she go? To the Washington Post. Now, here's the thing. I keep hearing all over television, of course. I want to hear what Dr. Ford has to say. Of course, she has a right to say. Well, of course. We all want to hear what Dr. Ford has to say. But Dr. Ford is an adult. She's a professor. She has a PhD. She's made an allegation against another human being. She needs to be cross-examined aggressively. She's not the bubble lady. She needs to be questioned. When somebody accuses somebody of a horrific crime, 36 years after the fact, said nothing to anybody else that we know of, at least there's no witness of any kind. The Ford people she mentioned say, no, that's not true. Ms. Ford needs to be questioned and thoroughly. And I want the American people to understand something. This entire process from Bork to Clarence Thomas and all the rest up to now has been hijacked by the radical left. Look at the Democrats on this committee. It's the most radical bunch imaginable. You've got Gillibrand, you've got Feinstein, Durbin, Kamala Harris, Booker, all from dark blue states, one-party states who are trying to appeal to the most radical crazies in their party. We need to stand up to this.
All right, Mark Levin, thank you. And could you imagine that 10 parties, boys lining up, drugging women, nobody ever said anything, and it happened more weekends? Unbelievable. We're going to have more on this when we continue. A lot of breaking news tonight. Mark's show, Life, Liberty, Levin, Sunday night, 10 p.m. right here on the Fox News Channel. When we come back, Ed Henry, Congressman Jim Jordan, Congressman Mark Meadows, and the latest on all of this and much more. Also, Russia's take on the events of today. Straight ahead.
They put their shoulders to it, broad backs and hard will, squaring off against whatever comes next.
They don't have time to go to. Are the correct.
All right, as we continue from Washington tonight with our reporting, Ed Henry has been poring over these newly released Kavanaugh transcripts. Ed, you found some things.
Sean,
great reporting. What do you got?
Pretty fascinating. Some news outlets running falsely tonight with the reports of a fifth accuser against Brett Kavanaugh involving an alleged sexual assault on a boat in Rhode Island in 1985. We've checked it out. It's bogus. It started with Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. He's vehemently opposed to Kavanaugh. He got a phone call from a Rhode Island constituent who claimed early on a Sunday in August 85 a close friend was sexually assaulted on a boat in Newport by two drunk men named Brett and Mark. That's all he had, first names. The man claimed one of the men was Kavanaugh. The man said he called the senator's office after recognizing Kavanaugh's yearbook photo in news reports. Senate Judiciary investigators asked Kavanaugh earlier this week in a private interview. We got that transcript, as you said, just moments ago. Kavanaugh declared he has never even been on a boat in Newport, saying, quote, "This is just completely made up, or at least not me. I don't know what they're referring to." Well, we checked it out, found out the man who called the senator's office has a Twitter account. An hour ago, he tweeted, quote, "Recanted because I have made a mistake and apologized." In earlier tweets, this same man called for a military coup against President Trump and accused the president, yes, of manslaughter. Sean, it gives you an idea of the onslaught Brett Kavanaugh is facing, the idea of ridiculous allegations that are flying around. Some people are running with them.
Like the fourth allegation, NBC News, they wouldn't make it against Matt Lauer or Tom Brokaw or Andy Lack, but it's okay if it's against the president or Judge Kavanaugh. Joining us now, by the way, we have another story rocking Washington in the bombshell New York Times piece reporting Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein proposed wearing the secret wire to record the president. Lawmakers are now demanding he come testify. With us, we have Freedom Caucus Chairman, Congressman Mark Meadows in North Carolina, and Congressman from Ohio, Jim Jordan. Good to see you both.
Great to be with you.
That news quickly, want to get your comments, obviously, on, I mean, I don't even know where to begin with what is now unfolding with Judge Kavanaugh.
You know, Sean, I met Judge Kavanaugh at a young lady who interned for us and, more importantly, clerked for Judge Kavanaugh. She's the daughter of Polly and I, some of our best friends from college. And Judge Kavanaugh flew to Morgan's wedding in Madison, Wisconsin. That's the kind of guy he is. He's a good man. He should be on the court. We know he's eminently qualified. We know he's the right guy for the job. And I hope it happens sooner rather than later.
What happens in the Senate? You know these guys maybe too well.
Well, I think at the end of the day, they'll hear both sides. They'll judge it on the merits of that. But I think the tactics that we're talking about is really distasteful to both sides. You know, when we really look at this, I got a readout that actually was coming from some of the activists, and they were telling them how to act, what to wear, how they were coming in, and quite frankly, coaching them on what to say. These are people that literally do not have a stake in this. They are organized by certain groups to come out and create chaos. What we need are real hearings and let Judge Kavanaugh set up for the vote.
Let me ask you both about Rod Rosenstein. The president commented about that today.
Sure.
Said he's been speaking with Rod.
Yeah.
You both know him.
Yeah.
He says he didn't do it. McCabe is one of the ones. Obviously, it was his notes were leaked, and he's known to lie. What do you think?
Well, I think the president's statement is consistent with where he's been. He says obviously he's never wanted to fire Rod Rosenstein. He's told
I think it's a trap myself.
Well, you know, whether it's a trap or not, I think here's the interesting thing is this president is all about transparency. And here we are today, Rod saying he didn't say it. I think he needs to come in before Congress, raise his right hand, and swear, because I can tell you, there are a number of things that Jim and I both know about that Rod did say that really needs some accountability.
He needs to be in front of Congress answering questions. Do we really want in this country the guy who is in effect running the Justice Department, talking about recording the commander-in-chief's conversations? Even if it's done in jest, it shouldn't be done in jest. It shouldn't be done at all. And by the way, this is the same guy who wrote the memo for firing Comey. This is the same guy who hired Bob Mueller. This is the same guy who signed the third FISA. And this is the same guy who, I believe, according to press reports from Fox News, threatened a House Intelligence Committee member because they were trying to get information that I think we're entitled to. So he had better come in front of Congress and answer our questions.
What about the president declassify unredacted materials?
That happened as well.
We've been on this, and listen, here's the interesting thing is, you know, Jim and I have been talking about Rod Rosenstein, DOJ, FBI for months and months and months. The only way for the American people to judge is to declassify these documents and get them out. Let's do the 302 or interviews, because you know what? It will be very illuminating, and we'll know very quickly.
Is there any chance, because the president mentioned 2 foreign countries, is there any chance that our intelligence community farmed out violating the Fourth Amendment to our Constitution? Why are you laughing, Mr. Jordan?
Look, all I'm saying is...
That's a laugh that says you're not dumb, Hannity.
No, you're not. You're over the target. Let's put it that way.
Lots of information we need to see as soon as possible.
Thank you both for what you're doing.
No, thank you, Sean.
Thank you. All right, when we come back, Rush Limbaugh weighs in on the Kavanaugh latest allegations as we continue. You can smell the stench right here in the studio. We're in the nation's capital, D.C.
They're going to call a landlord to replace the stove and reduce the service charge. Service returning 2155. Mass passenger 855 Victor Bolton 1, Fairview at Spencer Street.
So earlier today, interestingly, Rush Limbaugh reassessed one of his predictions that we happened to air Monday on this program, and he said that if Republicans do not confirm Kavanaugh, they could, quote, kiss the midterms goodbye in the wake of, well, the latest accuser. Rush said this today.
I think the outrage originally was going to be at Republicans for caving to all this, but now we're past that, because one of the things I believe is truly happening. I think fence sitters and casual news consumers, people that are not ideologically involved like you and I are, people who are not so-called news junkies, I think they're watching this and I think they're just getting livid, because this is so far outside the bounds of what even our degraded politics has come to be in terms of normal. This is so even beyond that.
In 41 days, Rush is right. You have all the power. This is insanity. All right, we'll always be fair and balanced. Let not your heart be troubled. Laura's in the next studio. We'll be back in D.C. tomorrow. How are you?
Hey, Hannity, I thought you were up in the rain. I thought you can weather any storm. You're supposed to be up there, and now you're in the cozy studio right next to me. I should have thrown something through the door.
Why are you being so mean? I just said, Laura's next. Let not your heart be troubled. She has all the latest breaking news. Don't miss Laura's show. And then you trash me every night. What's up with that?
It's just sisterly, brotherly love. That's all. Sean, you had a great show tonight.
All right, have a great show.
You're buying the margaritas later, okay? I've got to get ready for tomorrow's hearing. All right. Welcome to the Ingram Angle, everybody. I'm Laura Ingram in Washington. We are exactly 12 hours away from one of the most anticipated Senate hearings in recent memory. Tomorrow morning, Judge Brett Kavanaugh and Dr. Christine Blasey Ford will make their case in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee And an outside sex crimes prosecutor, well, we have every angle of this story covered tonight. You do not want to miss a moment, including we'll talk to a high school friend of Brett Kavanaugh who is mentioned prominently in the calendar that he submitted from the 1980s to the Judiciary Committee today. She'll join me in studio. Plus, an examination of a very flimsy polygraph submission by Dr. Ford, as well as some last-minute stall tactics by Democrats that may show them to be less confident than some would assume. What must Kavanaugh accomplish at tomorrow's hearing, and how might performance mean more than substance? Raymond Arroyo is here with some seen and unseen insights. But we begin with the accuser's last act. That's the focus of tonight's angle.
I have opposed his nomination.
Yeah, from the beginning.
I've opposed it from the beginning. I think the nomination should be withdrawn.
I strongly believe Judge Kavanaugh should withdraw from consideration, and the president should withdraw this nomination if Kavanaugh won't do it voluntarily.
I join Leader Schumer in calling for Judge Kavanaugh to withdraw his name from consideration.
Shocker. We told you this was going to happen. The longer the Republicans allowed Brett Kavanaugh to twist in the wind, the more concessions they granted to his last-minute accusers, the uglier it was going to get. You know, in musicals, the 11 o'clock number always arrives right on time to close out the show? Well, the 11 o'clock number in the Kavanaugh confirmation saga has arrived. Oh, he looks adorable on that stage. So, of course, porn star lawyer Michael Avenatti delivers a gift today. He dropped an affidavit in which this woman, Julie Swetnick, claims that Kavanaugh, while a high school student in the early 80s, spiked drinks at house parties to loosen girls' inhibitions and then essentially groomed them to be gang raped in side rooms. Swetnick further alleges that Kavanaugh was present at one such party in approximately 1982 when she herself was gang raped, though she says he didn't take part in it. Swetnick claims that there are witnesses who can vouch for her account. We haven't heard from them yet. Reacting to these outrageous charges, Kavanaugh today said the following: "This is ridiculous and from the Twilight Zone. I don't know who this is, and this never happened." Now, this is the third in a series of what certainly appears to be a carefully timed and coordinated smear campaign on Kavanaugh. First, there was Christine Blasey Ford, who's still scheduled, I said, to testify tomorrow morning before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Exactly no one has corroborated her claims, and the polygraph test that she submitted to the Judiciary Committee today, it reads like it was conducted by Cory Booker. We have more on that in a few moments. Then from stage further left came social justice advocate Deborah Ramirez, who claimed that Kavanaugh exposed himself to her during their freshman year at Yale. Ramirez, however, may have exposed the holes in her own salacious story by admitting to friends that she couldn't be quite sure if Kavanaugh was, in fact, the guilty party. Again, there are no corroborating witnesses. Kavanaugh has strenuously denied that it happened, and Ramirez herself admits to being bombed, slurring her words at the time, and she conceded that her memory was, quote, foggy. And then today, we saw a new addition to the playbill, Ms. Swetnick. Now, like the other two heroines of the anti-Kavanaugh resistance, her allegations are already getting bad reviews. She says she attended at least 10 parties where gang rapes were taking place. What? She also says that she went back to one such party in approximately 1982 after knowing that these gang rapes were taking place, where then she herself was raped. And it's important to note, in 1982, she was a sophomore in college. How many college students do you know who attend high school functions where gang rapes had previously occurred? None of it makes much sense at all. But this does. Tonight, we're learning a lot more about Avenatti's new prize, Ms. Swetnick. According to Politico, her ex-boyfriend paints a disturbing picture of her own character. In a phone interview with Politico, he said this about a 2001 injunction. "Right after I broke up with her, Swetnick, she was threatening my family, threatening my wife and threatening to do harm to my baby at that time. Know a lot about her. She's not credible at all. He said not at all. Wow. Despite all that, of course, the media today did what they always do. Try to make President Trump out to be the bad guy in all of this. Another choreographed performance.
If you don't mind, after I'm finished, if Ouija or Hallie or Vivian or one of our female colleagues could go after me, that would be great.
What does that mean?
I think it would be great if a female.
What does it mean?
Reporter,
No, what does it mean?
It would be great if a female reporter would ask you a question about this issue. So if you don't mind,
I wouldn't mind that at all. No, wouldn't mind it at all.
All right. Well, let me. If I
wouldn't make any difference to me.
To follow up on a question that a colleague asked as well.
Let me follow up on Jim's question. Mr. President, let me follow up on Jim's question that I don't think we got an answer to.
No collusion there. The president, though, he wasn't rattled by the swarm, and he gave his own kind of instant review of these last-minute theatrics.
It's a very tough situation for a woman. There's no question about it. I'd like to hear a story. Yeah. Well, we're giving her time. They're going to have a big shot at speaking and making their case. And you know what? I could be persuaded also. I think when you really look at it all, it's not going to change any of the Democrats' minds. They're obstructionists. They're actually con artists because they know how quality this man is, and they've destroyed a man's reputation, and they want to destroy it even more. And they know it's a big, fat con job. And they go into a room, and I guarantee you, they laugh like hell at what they pulled off on you and on the public. They laugh like hell.
I thoroughly enjoyed this press conference at the UN today. The entire allegation act, I think, is getting old. The last-minute solos are not credible, and the reporter's chorus, falling flat. My prediction, after all the hype, after all the bright lights, all of it's faded, after we've heard from the left about this Cavanaugh takedown effort, all of it, this production will close out of town. A total flop. And despite all the hysteria, Cavanaugh will finally get the featured role he deserves, and he's prepared for his entire life. A seat on the Supreme Court of the United States, and I have two words: life tenure. And that's the angle. Joining me now on set is Gail Trotter, the spokesperson for the Judicial Crisis Network, and Sonia Osorio, president of the National Organization of Women's New York City chapter. It's great to have you both on tonight. I want to start with you, Sonia. We've seen these late in the game drive-by hits on Kavanaugh's character and reputation. So is it not fair to inquire, as Politico did and other news organizations are tonight, about the character and reputation of the accusers?
The accusers aren't up for a lifetime position on the Supreme Court. We can talk about this all day long amongst us and on every television station, but what we need are experts. We need an investigation. There are so many people that are involved in these circles. That's the only way we're really going to get to the truth. And in terms of what you talked about, that there's no corroboration, there absolutely is.
Really? What's the corroboration? Let's start with the most recent. There's some anonymous stuff we'll get to, which is laughable. But what I just want to be clarified so for everybody can understand. So what you're saying is a woman can make any allegation against a man late in a process like this with no contemporaneous corroboration and not be subjected herself to scrutiny for motives or character or integrity?
Laura, I think that's exactly what's happening now.
My question is a serious one. You're saying a drive-by hit late in the process, after the confirmation's over, after these allegations have been sat upon, you cannot question them.
You're calling it a drive-by hit, so I think that that's already happening, that their characters are being
Politico. Is Politico part of the right-wing conspiracy?
Please, what we need to do is have an investigation. Let's have
but you're saying anyone who makes an allegation, no matter what,
That allegation has to be investigated by the FBI? Are you kidding me?
When the person is up for the Supreme Court.
So
Absolutely.
any allegation?
Absolutely.
Any allegation. Okay, we're making progress.
Yes,
Go ahead.
we
Gil.
are making some
Great.
progress.
Any allegation.
I'm so glad you
Okay,
agreed
that's
with me.
feminism today. Fantastic.
No,
Go ahead.
I think the truth is that far-left partisans, led by Chuck Schumer, vowed before Judge Kavanaugh's name was even released that they would stop this confirmation by any means necessary. And we're seeing that these far-left partisans think that the means are justified, the ends are justified by the means, and so they are going to do anything to engage in assassination of Judge Kavanaugh's character.
Ladies, are you suggesting that the Democratic Party or operatives went out and recruited these women and they sat around a table and they said, okay, now you're going to say this and you're going to lie, and I know you've got a life and a job and kids, but we're going to blow it all up because
they were calling around.
We don't
want to. They were calling around. That came out.
And Debbie Ramirez was speaking with lawyers for 6 days until she decided she was sure enough
recovered
that
her
it
memory
was
in 6
Judge
days.
Kavanaugh.
Let's read more about this latest accusation, because Michael Avenatti is like the gold standard of credibility. I mean, you can never question him. He's another person you can never question. She filed a sexual harassment complaint against her former employer. This is a New York Times piece tonight. About a decade ago. It was against New York Life Insurance. Okay. Sexual harassment complaint. That's fine. According to people familiar with the matter, representing her in the complaint was the firm run by, wait for it, Deborah Katz, the lawyer currently representing Dr. Ford. Is that just a coincidence?
Who knows? I mean, if she's an expert in workplace sexual harassment, you know what I think we should be asking is why doesn't Mark Judge, why isn't he subpoenaed? If we really want to know.
Those talking points are so lame. Mark Judge, who cares about Mark Judge?
You're so interested. You're so
There is
interested
no
in these
corroboration.
women. Oh my gosh.
For any of this. Where's the corroboration? Give me one contemporaneous witness. All four people in the room.
This proves why we need a full investigation.
It's really important. No, we don't have
you want him off the court because of Roe versus Wade, right? Let's just, it has nothing to do with his qualifications. You probably don't even believe these allegations. Do you really believe any of these allegations against him?
You know what I believe is? What I believe is I would like to know the facts, and the only way to get to a fact. That's besides the point.
You don't care about the facts. You want him off the court.
You say I don't care about the facts.
This because it's fifth vote on the court, and it's Roe versus Wade. And the National Organization for Women, God bless you, it's about Roe, it's about identity politics. And if this is feminism today, no wonder so few women want to identify themselves as feminists. Because every man is guilty. They're guilty as charged. Your reputation is down the tubes.
You're being so
unfair. Where does he go to get his reputation?
You're being unfair. You're being unfair to the American women.
Really?
To say
because
that.
most American women see through these late in the game hits. Yes, they do. They're calling BS on this, and you know it. Let's talk about the.
You know what? There are so many women across. You know, there's 3 of us right here in this room. There's 4 of us. The likelihood that one of us has been sexually assaulted is very much a possibility, because those are the statistics.
Okay, do you think women...
Sexual assault is a real problem.
I agree.
In our country.
I completely agree. 100%, sister. We agree on that.
How much worse is it if you have uncorroborated claims? How much does that affect all the women?
Well, we don't know that until we have an investigation.
No, we know they're uncorroborated. We don't know where they took place. We don't know when they took place. We do know the people that they identified, and all of them deny any recollection of these events.
Sonia, I have a question.
It is true. All the reasons
told her therapist. She was talking about
one
this
little problem.
in 2012
one little problem with
before
a therapist.
Trump was even running for president.
If I hear the therapist thing, I'm going to need a therapist, okay? Where are the notes? Where are the notes? Guess what? There are no notes. She didn't deliver her notes. You know why? Because I think the therapist was like the Acme therapist. There was no therapist. It was a big lie. Lie.
That is why we need a real investigation.
You know what we
by professionals.
You know what I want an investigation of? I want an investigation of what Brian Fallon, former Hillary Clinton operative, revealed to scuttle Kavanaugh, to keep the Supreme Court out of Kavanaugh's hands until 2020 out of Trump's hands. He said the following: saving the Supreme Court from Trump's clutches has always involved a very complicated 2-step. First, block Kavanaugh, then fight like hell to win back the Senate. If Kavanaugh drops out, we're halfway there. If Democrats are able to win the Senate back, we'd have a path to blocking Trump from picking any of the arch conservatives on his short list. This has been a plan from the very, very beginning. Deborah Katz has been a member of the resistance. George Soros's paws are all over this. They're not bussing people into town to play tiddlywinks. They're bussing people into town to smear a good man, and that's unfair. And I think it's a disservice to women.
You don't know if he's a good man.
Yes, I do. I've known him for 28 years. Thank you very much. And he's not a good man. He's a great man. He's not perfect. Sure, he had a few beers. I'm sure all of us had some beers in high school or college, but to say someone has done this with zero corroboration is an outrage.
For politics. You know, I have to tell you, this is why women do not report sexual assault. This is why so few women report it, because this is the treatment.
Would you go to a great party if you knew it happened 9 times? Would you go back to that same party? What kind of person, what kind of woman doesn't say, I want to protect my sisters out there. I want to protect the young girls in high school who are being lined up, apparently, to be raped. I'm going to go back to the party, have a beer, and then put myself in jeopardy. That's, as a woman, we should say, women,
I've talked to a
speak
lot
out.
of people.
She didn't protect other women if that happened.
And what about her lawyer? Any lawyer has a duty of obligation to their client, and she didn't go to law enforcement. So if you think that
But
that's
women have to protect other women. Women have to protect other women.
She didn't go to
law
her client when? that many
guys,
years ago?
we're running away late. But women have to protect other women, and I think you're right. Sexual assault is really serious. We have to take it seriously. We have to treat it seriously. But it's unfair to men and women.
Then why are you calling it a drive-by hit?
Because it is.
Why are you saying
because
why are you
because
calling
they
it
had an entire
victim?
they had a
You don't know that,
because
Laura.
they had
You just don't know
an
that.
entire
You don't know it's
confirmation
orchestrated.
process where they could have brought up these allegations, and Di-Fi sat on them because she knew it would be damaging
Well, now you're
2
talking
days
about
before a
something
vote.
different.
Well,
It's
sitting on an
all
allegation. I don't think
Why
you would
rush
do
it?
that. You wouldn't do it.
Why rush it?
All right, guys. We'll leave you to having the last word.
Let's have an
All
investigation.
right, we agree that sexual assault is really important. All right, thanks, you two. Judging by their actions, you would think that the Democrats don't really want Dr. Ford to testify? I don't know. As we noted earlier this afternoon, all of the Judiciary Committee Democrats sent a letter to President Trump telling him to withdraw Kavanaugh's nomination. Then a few hours ago, Dianne Feinstein urged Chairman Grassley to postpone tomorrow's hearing altogether. I predicted that would happen last night. You really can't make this up, folks? Well, here to analyze it all, former federal prosecutor, Fox News contributor Andy McCarthy. Andy, for the record, we think sexual assault is a serious problem. I thought it was serious when Juanita Broderick said that she was raped by Bill Clinton, and we didn't get a lot of support from feminists back then. I think it's important now. But I think what's been done to Brett Kavanaugh is one of the all-time travesties in American politics. It's despicable, it's a disgrace, and he's going to get confirmed, and there's no asterisk next to his name. I'm sorry. No way. Andy, I'm smoking over this. I'm really mad about what's happening.
No. Look, it's going to be like Clarence Thomas all over again. There's no asterisk once he gets on the court, which he richly deserves to be on. If you think about it, Laura, this nominee has more information that has been given to the Senate about him. They have more ability to exercise advice and consent to make a discriminating appraisal about his qualifications than any nominee in the history of the United States. And what they did here is exactly what you described. They sat on these allegations, they abused the process, and they were permitted to do it. And the minute that you start to give delay to people who are seeking delay, you get more delay and more problems, and that's why we're where we are now.
Andy, Avenatti was on with Chris Cuomo tonight on CNN, and he, again, said he wants an investigation, but then he kind of contradicted himself. Let's listen.
We want the FBI involved immediately to vet these allegations, to take interviews with all of the witnesses, including Mark Judge, including Brett Kavanaugh. I don't believe we could take her to the FBI because I don't think the FBI would have jurisdiction over her claims of abuse or inappropriate sexual conduct as pled or as stated in the declaration.
I don't think he's gotten enough sleep. I can't follow that logic. Take her to the FBI. Can't go to the FBI. I'm not following this. And everyone's hanging it on the FBI. Explain, with all the work you've done in prosecutions in New York, big trials, how does this all work?
Yeah, this is a background investigation, Laura. It's not a criminal investigation. It's not a counterintelligence investigation like we've been talking about for a couple of years. The FBI ordinarily doesn't have jurisdiction to investigate state law crimes like assault and these kinds of sexual abuses. But what they do is when the Senate has to exercise advice and consent, they help that process by vetting the candidates and bringing to the Senate's attention information that they discover during the course of that kind of investigation. It's not a full-blown criminal investigation, and a confirmation hearing is not a trial.
The idea is get enough information so that they can make a responsible decision about whether to approve this nomination or not. If they don't think that they can approve it, they shouldn't approve it. But it's not a trial. And the idea that the FBI can breathe life into an investigation that the state authorities themselves wouldn't do because it's so time-barred and so stale that it would be improper under the U.S. Constitution. Forget about the state statutes of limitations. There's no state that would do this kind of investigation, and the Bureau doesn't, by having background investigations, get to do something it wouldn't ordinarily do.
It's not going to happen. Andy, thank you so much. We're up against a hard break. Polygraph mania hits Washington. We'll get to it.
Say there was a new kind of place, the perfect place for the everyday.
3, car 2. 15 Sawmill Drive, Master Box, 4520, 2221.